Okay, so we were here uh, in the previous class. So we were discussing Brooks theorem. So we have this four observations. Right. So first is that we can assume without loss of generality that the given graph is two connected. Because if the graph is not two connected, of course we can assume that the graph is connected because we can always work with components when we are coloring. So if it is having a cut vertex, then what can we do? So let us see. Suppose the graph has a cut vertex. So if there is a cut vertex in the graph, say x or something, then what we will do is that we will look at the graph g minus x together with this x. For each component, I will consider the blocks basically. Each block I will take together with the vertex x, right, which contains x. Not necessarily each block. So you take x, remove it, take each component ci, right, and then put back x to that component alone, and then you will get this subgraphs. So take each of this subgraph, and now we know that in this subgraph the vertex x has degree less than delta, right? So we have a connected subgraph, right, which has one of the vertices have degree strictly less than delta. And therefore, by our earlier observation, if the degree is less than delta, then we can keep on finding vertices because the graph is connected. We can keep on finding vertices of degree at most delta in the in this growing order, right? And then we can always color this vertex with delta colors. So we have a delta coloring of each component together with x. So there is a coloring of component C1, there is a coloring of component C2, etc. But now what do we do? Because it is a cut vertex, we know that the only place these components are joined together is the cut vertex. So therefore, what we do is that we look at whatever coloring that we have on C1 and look at what is the color that we have given for x. So let us that x is colored with color red. Right? Now in C2, maybe we have colored x with color blue. So C1 gives color red to x and C2 gives color blue to. But what we do is that we already know that if I take a coloring and just rename, right, colors, right, with or permute the colors. Like basically, all the red vertices I call now blue vertices, and all the blue vertices I call as red vertices. This is going to be still a good coloring, right? So what I'm going to do is that I take each of these components with x, look at the coloring, and I can rename the color classes so that x is always colored with the same color. Let's say that. Now if I put them back together, there is no problem, right? Because x is always colored consistently and properly, right? The component is colored properly, and x is always getting the same color, right? And now when I put back together, its neighbors are all properly colored in each of the components. And therefore, we have a good color. So we can assume without loss of generality that there is no cut vertex. Okay, so second is that of course we already observed it that the graph is regular in degree delta, because if it is not regular, we already saw that we have a way to color using delta colors. So the third observation is that it suffices to show that the graph has say vertices a and b which are at distance 2, right? There is no edge between a and b, but they have a common neighbor. And the graph after removing a and b is still a connected graph. And why is this true? Because if suppose we can show this, right, there is a pair of vertices let's say A and there is a vertex B having some common neighbor, right? Now, and they are not adjacent. There is no edge between these two, right? So in this case, and what we know is that after removing, A and B, the remaining graph is a connected graph. So what I do is that I first remove A and B, right? Look at the remaining graph, and it is connected. So I start growing a spanning tree from the vertex X, which is the common neighbor of A and B. Now, once I start growing a spanning tree from X, we know that because the degree of X is less, and the graph is connected, we can find a delta coloring of this. Right? It is possible. But what I'm going to do is something different. What I'm going to do is that I will start with A and B, and I color A and B with the same color. Okay? Because A and B are not adjacent, they can be given the same color. And then I put the remaining vertices and start growing, according to the tree growing order. I mean, in the reverse order. Now, what happens is that when I reach the vertex X, how many neighbors it has, right? So, because the tree was connected, we know that for every vertex other than X, it's it has some forward neighbor. Therefore, all the pre-colored vertices, the degree of the pre-colored vertices will always be at most delta minus 1. Therefore, I have one color to give that vertex from 1 to delta. But now, because I have given A and B the same color, right? So when I come to X, I know that two of its neighbors are already colored with the same color. And therefore, we still know that, even though it has, delta neighbors to the left, since two of them are given the same color, we can still find a color from 1 to delta, which is not used in the neighborhood of X. And therefore, we can extend the color. So that is the idea. And so what we basically show that we can always find such a pair. So if you have a regular graph that is two connected and not complete, right? If you can find such a pair, then we are done. So now what remains is that suppose the graph has the following property, right? So if for some vertex, let's say A, the G minus A is two connected, then we claim that we can always find such a pair. And why is this? Well, so we have the graph, which is two connected, and after removing one vertex A, the graph is still two connected. I hope that you have thought about this, going home, as I mentioned before, because it is important that you think about this. Because if I just tell this, it's not going to be much enlightening. Okay, so what we are saying is that, yeah, so we have a vertex, let's say A, and after removing A, the graph is still two connected. So the graph is still two connected means that, removing one vertex, one more vertex from the remaining graph will not disconnect the graph, right? So I can pick any vertex from this remaining two connected graph and remove it, it will still be connected. So now if I can find one more vertex to remove, which is not adjacent to A, then I am done, right? But there is always a vertex. And why is that? Because we are not working with a complete graph, right? And we know that the graph is delta regular, right? And now, since the vertex A I have picked is a vertex of degree delta, in the remaining graph, which is a two connected graph, G minus A, it should have at least one vertex which is not adjacent to A, because if everything is adjacent to A, then we know that the regularity will be equal to the number of vertices minus 1, therefore the graph will be complete. So therefore there is some vertex which is not adjacent to A, I just pick this vertex, right? So I can always find, if there is some vertex which is not adjacent, I can always find a vertex which is at distance exactly 2, because just take a path from that vertex to the non-adjacent vertex, and you have one vertex which comes in between. Right? So you pick such a vertex, and therefore I have my A and B, right? So I remove these two, the graph is still still connected, and therefore I can do the previous procedure that we have mentioned. So now we can assume that the graph is G minus the vertex x is separable for some vertex x. So suppose we have this property that we have the graph G and we have a vertex x that we have picked up, and G minus x has some cut vertices. This means that it is separable. It could have several cut vertices. But now if you remember, the block structures of a graph, right? Blocks are basically maximal subgraphs without cut vertices, right? So if you look at the block structure of a graph, so the like you have several blocks, and which are, if it is connected, you have a block, and then you have other blocks which are incident to it. But if you take a maximum length path in the graph, right, the endpoints of these vertices must belong to blocks which has only one cut vertex, because if you reach a block where there is two cut vertices, that cannot be a maximum length path. You can always extend it. So if you take a maximum length path, you will always end up in what did I say? If you take I think you can. I mean, you can find a you can find a conversion. So maybe you need to think about it a little bit, but one can figure out. So now or in other words, what I'm saying is that there is always some blocks which has exactly one cut vertex. Because just look at that is called end block. Some terminology that we can use is an end block is a block which has exactly one cut vertex. So like for example, here this is an end block, this is an end block, this is an end block, but this and this are not end blocks. There are more than one cut vertex incident. Now the property about this is that if there is an end block, right? I start with a two connected graph, and after removing one vertex, I have cut vertices, and there is some end blocks. Each of the end block must have some neighbor to this vertex x, because if it is not there, the graph originally cannot be two connected, because the only way the graph becomes two connected is that this cut vertex is not a cut vertex in the graph, which means that there must be a path from any vertex here to some other vertex, right? So on this side of it. So it means that there should be some way to do that. So each end block must have some neighbor of x, right? Contain some neighbor of x. And if there is a cut vertex, we have at least two end blocks, right? Because if you have one of them, and then the other end of the path you start from this block, and then you keep on going, and then you will end up in one of these end blocks, right? Like this or like this, something like that. So take there will be at least two end blocks, and take these two end blocks, right? So both of them have neighbors here, and because it is a block, the blocks are all there is no cut vertex. So if I remove one vertex, it will not disconnect the graph. So if I pick a vertex from the block and remove it, it is not going to disconnect the graph, and which is it's not already a cut vertex, right? So there is a non-cut vertex here. So pick that and pick that. And these vertices, which are neighbors of 2x, are definitely not cut vertices. So once I pick these two vertices, they are both adjacent to x, and they are not adjacent, right? Because they are belong to different blocks, so they cannot be adjacent. And what we see is that we have a pair of vertices whose removal still keeps the graph connected, and it has a common name. Therefore, we can continue the procedure, and we get a coloring using delta. So this is basically the proof of Brooks theorem, one of the proofs. Now we will get another proof today. Before that, let me give you a couple of homework questions. So first question is that given a graph G, right, whose chromatic number is K. So I ask you to prove or disprove that in any proper coloring of this is a very important question. You should think about it. Prove or disprove that in any proper coloring, right? Proper K coloring. Right? So chromatic number is K, and we are looking at proper K colorings of the graph. Not using K plus 1 or K plus 2. Right? Precisely the chromatic number. And for any color I, right? So I use the colors 1 to K to color the graph. And then for any color I between 1 to K, you can always find some vertex of color I such that every color other than I appears in the neighborhood of Xi. Okay. So every color other than I appears in the neighborhood of Xi. And this is true for every single color. So if you take a chromatic K chromatic graph and give a K coloring, I claim that this is the case. So if it is true, you prove it. If it is not true, you find a context. So given a graph which is, let's say, K critical. So what is the K critical graph? So if chromatic number is equal to K, and for every proper subgraph, right? Proper means that it is not equal to G, but any subgraph will do, right? Chromatic number is strictly less than K. So if you remove a single edge or a vertex, you will have chromatic number strictly less than K. Now, prove that if the graph is K critical, then the minimum degree of the graph I think it is G. It's not H. Is greater than or equal to K minus 1. Okay, so if the graph is K critical, minimum degree of G is greater than or equal to K minus 1. Then I have given a graph here and ask you to show, first of all, find the chromatic number and then show that it is, it's basically, or find a, Chi-G critical subgraph. So if a graph is, let's say, K chromatic, it will always contain a subgraph which is critical and K chromatic, right? It's K critical. Why is that? Because you can just keep on removing edges which will not make it, make the chromatic number less, and then you end up in a graph. If you remove any edge, the chromatic number will be really small. So we can always find such things. So find chromatic number of G critical subgraphs. I will attach one of them of this graph. Then show that given a graph in which any two odd cycles have non-empty intersection. Okay? So take any two odd cycles, they have a non-empty intersection. Prove that its chromatic number is at most 5. Okay, so a graph in which any two odd cycles have non-empty intersection, then show that its chromatic number is at most 5. Then fifth question is that given a graph G, which is the complement of some bipartite graph. Okay, so graph G is a complement of some bipartite graph. Then show that for every induced subgraph of the graph G, right, the chromatic number is equal to the clique number. So a hint is that it basically, first you can observe that if I prove this for the graph G, it suffices. Okay, then for every induced subgraph it follows for this particular case. Okay, in this special case, it follows that if you show that the chromatic number of G is equal to omega of G, then it also follows that the induced subgraphs also satisfy this property. Okay, so you can prove each of these statements in 2 steps. So now another proof of Brooks theorem. So this time we are going to use a very different tool. And our first observation is what we mentioned in the previous class, that suppose you have a coloring of a graph, right? Proper coloring of a graph, and then you pick up any subset of colors, right? Any subset of the colors, and look at the graph induced, right? The subgraph induced by this color classes, right? The vertices of this color. So in this example, I have taken yellow and green, and then look at the graph induced by the yellow and green vertices in this graph. Right? So if you look at this graph, you will see that if you look at the yellow and green vertices, the edges between them are going to be all appearing in this and then here. Right? So any pair of edges which connects yellow and green will be here. Right? You can of course select any number of colors that you want. Then you will get different subgraphs. So pick up yellow and green here and then look at the subgraph here. Right? Now it happens that there are two components of this. Okay? In this case, right? So we have these two components. One of them I call as L. Now what I do is that I look at the entire graph and take this specific vertex set of this component L, and in L I know that the vertices are colored with yellow and green. Right? So I'm going to take any permutation of the colors in L. So which means that there are only two here, so therefore I am going to just basically switch yellow to green and green to yellow. Right? If there are three, I can take any permutation that I want, right? And then I end up in another coloring, right? So where I just switch the colors here. So you can see that this has basically come to this because this yellow vertices has become green and the green vertices have become yellow in this part alone, right? Other parts I have kept it as it is. This coloring is, and the remaining vertices I don't do anything. Now the thing is that like after doing this, I will still get a proper coloring, and I have not used any extra colors. Right? Why is that? Because if you look at this L, right, and I'm switching the colors, because this is an entire component, there is not going to be an edge from this to any of the colors, which is green or yellow in the remaining graph. And here I am just renaming the colors, so therefore this is proper, and that's also proper. And that is the basic idea. So we can do this for any number of colors, and it is okay. So you just take any of the components of the subgraph induced by the color classes. I can just permute the colors within, and there is no problem. So we use this fact, right? So this is the observation I have written. So let G be a properly k-colored graph, and L is any component of the subgraph induced by the vertices of some colors. Let's say 1, 2, 3, etc. L. It's small l. Now consider the coloring obtained by keeping the colors of vertices outside the vertex set of L as fixed. The vertices only in L that we have just done, right? In that component alone, we can permute, right? So permuting the colors in L any way we like. Permuting means that each color goes to some other color, right? You cannot just say that, okay, some of the green vertices will be, that is not a permutation. Okay, so then the new coloring is also a proper coloring of G. Right? So this is something that we can easily observe. We will use this in our proof. So to prove Brooks theorem, in this case we are going to assume that suppose this theorem is not true, right? Which means that you can find a graph, right, which violates the Brooks theorem. Now, what do we mean by that? That for this particular graph, the graph is not complete and it's not a odd cycle, and the chromatic number is more than delta, right? So suppose that such a graph exists. Then if there is such a graph, then I can always look at a minimal order graph, right? The smallest graph, right? After removing the vertices of this, I can pick up a small enough graph, right? The smallest such graph I can find out. the size of the vertices is the smallest, right? So anything with less number of vertices, there is no such counter example, right? And I have a counter example to this theorem and pick such a smallest graph. So this is called a minimal counter example because the smallest size or minimum size graph which violates the theorem, right? Or theorem or the statement that we want to prove. And once I pick any vertex or an edge from this graph, in this case order, therefore any vertex if I remove, the remaining graph is not a counter example, right? It will satisfy the Brooks theorem. So I pick such a graph, right, of smallest order. Now what I do, from this graph, let me pick some vertex and remove it. Now, if you look at the the vertex x, once I remove it, I know that the graph h, which is obtained by removing x, right, g minus x, is not a counter example, and therefore it has a delta color, right? So the remaining graph h has a delta coloring, and if I can extend it to x, right, then I am. So now what we can observe, what can you say about x, right? So x is a vertex that I have removed, and x has, let's say, neighbors x1, x2, etc., x small d, which is the degree of the graph x. So what you can observe from this, what we can observe is that x must be of degree delta, right? Because if the degree of x is less than delta, then h has a delta coloring, h has a coloring, and then in the delta coloring, the neighbors of x will use, at most d colors, right? x1, x2, etc., xd. And if d is less than delta, then we know that there is some color which is not used in the neighborhood of x, right? That color I can give to x. And therefore, I'm happy, right? So I extended the coloring to x. So therefore, I know that x must have degree delta, right? And since this is true for every vertex must have degree delta. So therefore, I know the graph we are looking at is irregular graph. This is the first version, right? So pick any vertex and look at the neighborhood, right? N of x, which is x1 to xd. Since g minus x has a delta coloring, we know that by the choice of the graph G, it's a minimal counter example. We know that the vertex x must have degree delta. Okay. So I think I have written it down here. So in any delta coloring, then color we can extend if the degree is less than delta. So that is the first fact. D is equal to delta, and all the colors, delta colors, must appear on these vertices, right? Because otherwise we can still color, right? Even if the degree is larger, right? If some of the colors are repeated, we still can find such a color. So therefore, the fact one that we observe is that x1 to x delta, are the neighbors of x, and all the colors, right? All the delta colors are used in the vertices x1 to x delta. So each of them will be colored with one of these delta colors, and therefore because the naming is arbitrary, we can always assume that the vertex xi in the neighborhood of x is colored with the color I, right? It doesn't matter. We can always rename so that the name matches the color. Okay, so we assume without loss of generality that xi in the neighborhood of x is colored with the color I for all the I in 1 to delta. Okay, so this is now what I do, I look at the subgraph induced by the color classes I and j, the vertices which are colored I and j, and I call it hij, where h is the graph g minus x, and I am looking at the subgraph induced by the vertices colored I and j in H. Okay. So Hij is such a subgraph, and this is defined now for any pair of colors I and j, right? Because any pair of colors, all the colors are appearing somewhere. And look at any two colors, look at the subgraph induced by this two colors. Now, let us look at how this subgraph induced by these two colors are going to be like, at least some part of it. So I know that in the neighborhood of the vertex x, all the colors appear, right? So in particular, the color vertex xi is colored with color I, and if I look at the vertex xi, right, it is colored with the color I, and xj is colored with the color j, right? Now I claim that if you look at the subgraph induced by the color I and j in H, because the color I is here in xi, right, and j is here in sj, right? They appear in some components of hij, right? Some components hij can have, of course, several components as you observe. But now I claim that in fact the vertex xi as well as the vertex xj must belong to the same component of xij. Okay. So if xi and xj are not connected, right, in the component cij, right, of hij, right? So look at the color classes I and j, and look at the vertices which are colored I and j, and connect them, right, with the edges in the graph. And if they are not connected, xi and xj are not connected in this graph by these two colors, then I claim that we can always, recolor, right? So what I'm going to do is that I pick up, let's say in this case, I pick up this component which contains xi, right? Components of I and j, which contain xi, and then I just recolor this component, right, or switch the colors I and j in this component. And then what happens if I switch I and j in this component? I know that for each component I can do this, right? We have observed that before. So if I switch the colors here, then I becomes j, right? J becomes I, right? And and I get a component, and the graph is now properly colored with exactly the same number of colors. But what has changed is that since I did not change, switch the colors I and j in this component containing xj, now xi as well as xj are both colored with the color j. Colored with the color j, which means that in the neighborhood of the vertex x now, right, the color I is missing, and therefore I can color now x with the color I, and I get a coloring of the graph G. Right? It's a proper coloring because color I is not appearing in the neighborhood. Right? So if these components are not connected, right, xy to xj are not connected, I can do this, switching in one of them, and then I can do it. Therefore, at least the component containing xi and xj, right, must be a connected component of the graph hij. So let us call it Cij. So Cij is the component which contains xi and xj. Yeah, so that is the fact too, that the vertices xi, xj, right, for every pair ij. This is true for any pair of I and j, right? So not just for one pair. For every pair, it is true that they belong to the same component Cij of Hij. Okay. So therefore we know that there must be some component containing xi, xj, xi, xk, like x1, x2, all these pairs. And yeah, so here is the formal argument. Then I have another observation that the component Cij, right, which can is basically an xi, xj path. Okay, there is nothing else there. It is a single path. Okay, there cannot be any other branches to this path. There is of course a path because it is connected, but now we claim that this path is basically a single path and there is nothing else connected to it. There is no other neighbor. Now why is that? So we look at two cases. The first case is that we have let's say the vertex xi, right, which is colored I, and suppose it has two neighbors, right, colored with j, right? Because we are looking at ij component, right? If it is not a single path, it could be something extra which is connected to any of these vertices. Suppose it is xi itself, right? So let us say that the vertex xi has some other neighbor which is colored j. Now the graph is delta regular, which means that the degree of xi is also delta, right? And therefore now two of the neighbors of xi is colored with j, means that there is one color which is still missing from the neighbors of xi and the color I, right? So some color other than I and j which is not used in the neighborhood of xi. So I can give that color now to xi, and I will get a coloring where xi is colored with a color other than this, right? So therefore, what happens? I get a coloring where the neighborhood of x misses again one color, right? I mean, misses the color precisely I, because I have recolored xi with some color which is not appearing in the neighborhood of xi. So this says that xi cannot have a neighbor which is colored j other than on the path from xi to xj, right? Similarly for xj also. So then what do we do? Then let us assume that of course it cannot be xi, but there is some other vertex which has some neighbor. So let us look at the path from xi to xj and look at the first vertex, right, which has some which has degree more than 2, right, in this graph. So I am looking at the subgraph induced by the color classes I and j. So all the neighbors I am talking about are basically colored I and j, right? So suppose some vertex y whose neighbor, who has one more neighbor other than in this path, there is one more neighbor. Now if there is another neighbor, I know that this neighbor must be colored. If it is colored y, then it must be j, and if it is j, right, if y is here, then this must be colored I, right? So in either case, I know that the first vertex of degree will have some neighbor, and that says that in the neighborhood now I have so I have these three colors appearing, so one color will be still missing, so I can now recolor five colors other than I and j, right, because three colors are used in the neighborhood. So some color other than I and j is available, and I can color that with that color. And once I color this with that color, right, let's say the color k, right, suppose I color it with color k, then what happens? Then the component containing xi and xj will get disconnected, right? Now suddenly it will get disconnected because this is the first vertex of degree larger than this. This part will definitely get disconnected from this part. So therefore, I know that this cannot happen, and hence the only component can be a path, right? Directly a path. There's nothing else possible. So the component containing xi and xj is just a path from xi to xj. Okay, so here are the two observations which is written down formally. And our final observation is that let us take any two of them, right? Cij and Cik, right? The path from xi to xj and the path from xi to xk, right? That components. Their intersection is precisely the vertex xi for any j not equal to k. Okay, so the intersection Cij and Cik must be precisely one vertex. And why is that? Well, let us look at this picture. We have the vertex x. And I have paths, right? X to, xk, xi to xj, ij, etc. like this. Then xi to xk, ik, etc. Up to here, right? Now, if you take these two paths, the claim was that the only intersection point is singleton x, right? But suppose not, right? If it is not, then it must intersect at some vertex, right? So if the ij component and the ik component intersect, it can be only at a vertex which is called I. So let us pick this vertex which is the intersection point, which is y, and this y vertex now has the two neighbors which are colored k and two neighbors which are colored j. So which says that I can find a color, right, from the delta colors. I can, four of the vertices are colored with just two colors. So therefore, I can find a color which is other than I, J, and K, right, from the the list of colors in the neighborhood, and I can recolor this vertex with that particular color, right? And we are still back to square one, right? Because once you do this, we immediately see that the components get disconnected, right? And then we are still in problem, right? So if y is in this intersection, then precisely we can recolor y from I and j k, and it will again contradict our first assumption that we have get disconnected components. Okay, so this we are ready to the final blow, right? So what we do is that we have this graph, and we have this structure. We know all about the structure of the graph that we are looking at, right? The minimum counterexample, right? So we have this vertex x. It has delta neighbors, and then we know that each of these guys are paths, right? So let's say x1 to x3. So yeah, so another thing is that we can we know that because the graph is not complete, right? Then it's not delta regular. It's delta regular but not complete. So in the neighborhood of x, right, the graph is not complete, which means that one of the edges between some xi and xj is missing. Right? Now, since we can always rename, right, either the color classes or the vertices that we want, we can assume that the edge that is missing is precisely x1, x2. So x1, x2 edge is missing, right? So x1, x2 edge is missing. And what I am going to do is that now I am going to look at the x1, x2 path, x1, x3 path, and x2, x3 path, right, in the graph. X1, x2 path is, the x1, x3 path is the 1, 3 path. which I call C13. Similarly, C12 is the X1, X2 path, and C23 is the X2, X3 path. Right? So these are all paths, and they intersect only at vertex C12 and the C23 intersect at X2, C12 and C13 intersect at X1, and C23 and C13 intersect at X3. Right? This we know. This is the structure of this graph. But now, once I have this, what I am going to do is that I take this component C13. Okay, I take the component C13 and I am going to switch the colors in that component, right? Because C13 is a component, we know, and I am going to switch the colors in that component. So the C13 component, we already know that is just a path. So I'm going to just say that, okay, 1 is now 3 and 3 is now 1, right? So I'm going to interchange the colors, 1 and 3, I interchange in C13. Now what has happened if I interchange the colors here? Of course, the vertex x1 is now colored with 3, right? Then its neighbor is 1, 3, 1, 3, etc. like this in this path. Okay, that is all we have changed, and therefore x3 is colored 1. Now this switching in one of the components is always ending up in a good coloring, right? So it's a proper coloring. And now what can we say? So because it is a good coloring, again we have to look at this property, right? So we have these components, right? C12 now has become C12 dash, right? C13 is C13 dash, C23 is C23 dash, etc. Right? So I can rename them. So what is C23 dash? Now we know that the vertex x1 is now colored 3 and the vertex y, right, which is so in the x1 x2 path, right, because x1 x2 is not an edge, there must be some vertex in the neighborhood of x1 which is colored 2, right, because there is a path and there is no direct edge. We know that this must be some vertex, right, which is other than x1 and x2. So there is some vertex which is other than x1 and x2 in this path. So that vertex is colored with 2 in the original graph, and when I recolored x1 x3 path, this vertex is colored, right, but now this is colored 3 and this is colored 2, so therefore the C23 component, right, must contain y inside it, right, because x1 and x2 are adjacent, right. X1 is part of C23, right, because x1 is now colored 3 and 2 is adjacent to it, therefore this must be part of C23. And what about C12, right? C12 dash, right? So C12 dash is basically starting from the vertex colored 1, right? And but of course, we have not changed anything from this part other than this, vertex x1 was recolored. So C12 dash basically contains everything except x1, right? And therefore, it will also contain y, right? Because it reaches up to 1, 2 reaches up to here. So now C12 dash and C23 dash, right, in the new components, whatever it is, there could be some other connections we don't know, but it definitely contains the vertex y, right, the intersection, and y was not part of the xi's, which means that we get a contradiction to the fourth fact, right, that we proved that the intersection is precisely xi itself, right. So therefore some vertex other than this is there, which contradicts fact 4, and therefore one of the assumptions that we made must be wrong, and we made only the assumption that there is no such delta coloring for the graph. Okay. So we just observe this, right? So since the graph is not complete, we can find some edge which is missing, and then we do this recoloring of one of the components, and then we end up in a contradiction. So I have written it down here, and I hope that you will be able to make a good note out of it.